Do condo boards have conflicts of interest? This is a very important question to ask, especially if you're considering buying a condo or, for example, a co-op, which exists only in New York City. These are all shared forms of living, and these condo buildings are run by a board of directors that's elected by the owners, usually in an annual meeting. That's assuming that there is enough participation to get a quorum or people actually care in the building to run for the board. But yes, there are absolutely potential conflicts of interest. We, of course, hope that every board member who runs for a condo board seat is doing it out of the goodness of their own heart. But you have to keep in mind that it is a volunteer position. Of course, if they run the building well, it benefits them, but everyone else, their neighbors, also gets a free ride. So unfortunately, human nature comes into play, and we see this all too often. There is definitely room for conflicts of interest to mature. Can't expect that everyone will be a white knight. In fact, you shouldn't go into buying or owning a rental, whether as an investment property or to live in, to expect that the condo board is going to be super scrupulous and honest and never do anything that might have a tinge of conflict of interest. And keep in mind, it can be something as innocent as, for example, wanting to subsidize a certain activity that the board members like. So for example, parking valet is a exponentially increasing expense these days, for example, in many buildings in Miami, because labor costs have gone up so much. So valet staff are charging more when they renew their agreements. It's become a headache for many condo buildings with free valet. Now the solution would be to make it not free and have individual unit owners pay for it themselves if they want if they want valet, otherwise park your own car. Now, let's see an example where the condo board, perhaps they have smaller units and they have parking spots, on the 8th floor, 9th floor, however high it is, and they paid less for them, but they want free valet, and maybe half the building uses it, the other half doesn't. Well, because they use it, they may unilaterally decide as the board that we're going to socialize this cost and have free valet for everyone, even though it is their personal preference. The other half of the building doesn't use it and would probably want to reduce common charges. That's just one example. It could be other examples such as, for example, a certain, one board member perhaps wants a specific amenity, perhaps balloons I'm just making this up, balloons in the common areas because she really likes balloons. And another condo board member really likes, free bikes that everyone could rent out because she's a big biker. And they, even though this is kind of random, but they, kind of swap and kind of both agree to vote for each other's plans. Kind of how Washington works, it seems. And you get both of these things that perhaps they too want for themselves, but perhaps no one else in the building cares about or has even thought about paying for, but you end up socializing, again, costs onto the entire building based on the personal preferences of the board members. Usually you hope people are reasonable and they don't do things like this or they get voted out. But, again, it can be problematic because you can also have situations where, you have even with a big building where you think there would be more participation, you never know. So oftentimes people, especially in luxury buildings, people just can't be bothered. They're too busy to bother even showing up for the annual board meeting, let alone the election meeting, let alone participating. So sometimes these bad behaviors are just allowed to persist because there's no competition for the board seats. And of course, this is even more malicious. I mean, you do see poorly run buildings, especially in co-ops, for example, in New York City, where this seems to happen more often than any other city, where there are actually corrupt board members and they essentially don't have free and fair elections. They may say, hey, if you wanted to run, we sent out like the slate for you to nominate yourself a month ago. Oh, you didn't get it? Too bad. But somehow nobody seemed to have gotten it. And then at the meeting, maybe they say, hey, nobody showed up nobody showed up, or not enough people showed up for a quorum, and so the existing board will automatically roll over. Or, hey, it seems that nobody nominated themselves to be on the board to run against the current board, so we're just going to keep the existing board. And in fact, because one of them retired, we're going to give ourselves the power to appoint without an election an additional board member. So all sorts of shenanigans like this can happen. Now, you have to also remember that ultimately most people are nice and they're not hopefully trying to be malicious or fraudulent. But again, even the best of board members, they may vote for certain things that perhaps they like, and again, socialize the cost onto the entire building. So this is one of the unfortunate side effects of shared living, whether you're in a condo or a co-op building. When you have neighbors like this and you have a shared budget, it's unfortunate. I mean, it can even be small things such as, hey, everybody should not tip individually, but you guys should all tip to a holiday fund, and then we as the board will have the power to distribute the tips out to various staff members. Now, this is again similar to what you might see going on in Washington. You collect the taxes and then you have the power and influence because you're the one distributing the favors out. So there's just lots of small things like this to watch out for. It's kind of an unavoidable part of condo living. Now, with that said, in certain markets, it's something that you want to live with because the relative value and quality of life is better than perhaps living in a house. For example, in Miami, the single family house market is completely out of whack. It's extremely, extremely overvalued in our opinion and overpriced. And some of the prices here you see are just absolutely stratospheric. So you can get a better quality of life, much, much superior view for a fraction of the cost of a waterfront single family home, for example. So these are just some considerations to keep in mind. Now don't assume that everyone is out to get you. They're not, but it is an unavoidable fact that the vast majority of buildings are going to have these slight, at the minimum, conflicts of interest. And it's just something you should watch out for. And how should you deal with it? Well, we always like to say that the best way to get along if you're not intending to sell or something is to align your personal preferences and incentives as much as possible with that of the board. So for example, if the board, they have kids, they want to really socialize the cost of having kid-friendly things within the amenities and buildings because they have kids, well then maybe hopefully you have kids also, or you try to align your incentives, your personal preferences with theirs. For example, parking, maybe you do free valet as well. And you just use the valet as much as possible as well to align your incentives and to take advantage of what's being charged to you. So that's really our piece of advice on this. And another sort of great hack on this as well is if you're worried about common charges, which always do seem to increase if you're in a condo, is to buy one of the smaller units. So don't, in a building with different unit sizes, don't buy the biggest one, buy a smaller unit so you can take advantage of the same amenities but get a lower proportion of the common charges assessed to you because they're typically based on square footage. So you pay a proportionally less amount of common charges, you get access to the same benefits and amenities, and because you're paying among the least, even if they raise it, remember these condo board members are going to have to pay those common charges themselves too. So it's going to hurt them ideally the same or more, in which case you're semi-protected in that case, based on their own personal incentives to not inflict too much pain on themselves. So we hope you found this video helpful. My name is Chris at Hauseit. If you're looking to buy or sell a property in New York or Florida, check us out, Hauseit.com. We can help you save 6% when you sell with the Hauseit Agent-Assisted FSBO listing, and we can help you save 2% or more when you buy with a Hauseit buyer closing credit, where we give you 2/3 of the commission or more back at closing. My name is Chris at Hauseit, and I'll see you on the next one.